welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and another 2022 debut this week as Jarrod is co-hosting this week. Welcome back, Jarrod.
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Starting off the year okay? Are you feeling all right?
Got a little bit of a cold, but, things happen.
Is it a man cold or is it just a regular cold?
Well, all right. So let's see. My father-in-law tested positive for COVID, and so did my brother-in-law. But my wife has the same symptoms, but tested negative, and I haven't tested positive either. So I don't know what it is. Could be that. Could be completely unrelated. But everybody's doing okay so far. Just a little, sore throat, sniffles, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems to be going around. I think we'll go into it more on the Broke block since I'm kind of seeing some of the same thing on my end. But for anyone else out there, if it is your very first episode, the way we format the bulk of the show is we go through news first, and then we end it with the Broke block, which is the more personal side of the podcast, what Jarrod and I have been doing during the week, whether it's something we've been playing, reading, or watching. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 491. Video game news this week, the Entertainment Software Association announced that it will be shifting to an online format in 2022. This is the second year in a row that E3 will now be held solely online, with the culprit behind this decision once again being COVID-19. When they did it last year, I know in our Discord, there were some rumors of this is the last E3, this is pretty much dead, that who needs E3? We talked about it on the show last year too. Yeah. What do you think about this, Jarrod? Is this a bad move for him?
I think it's just kind of going to be another move towards becoming irrelevant. The whole point of E3, in my opinion, was to have everybody come to one place. Not just the, going to see the shows, but the networking and things like that happened at that show was huge, especially for, I feel honestly worse for the smaller video game content creators, the independent outlets and stuff like that don't necessarily this is a great place for them to make connections with a lot of these companies. And now it just doesn't happen that way anymore. Now you got to go back to, blind emailing or something like that.
And I know Bobby has talked about the Summer of Games show that's been going on. You might be a little bit more familiar with that, but do you think shows like that or other up-and-coming ones are going to instead replace the significance that was?
I don't know about that. The Summer of Games thing is kind of neat in a way as a replacement E3, but if E3 is going online and they're doing that, it's kind of the same thing. I honestly don't know how many actual shows there's going to be anymore. I mean, with Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, they're all able to do their own thing online and put in more production value if they're just doing an online, say, festival or whatever on their own and get a similar number of eyes. The whole point of E3 to begin with was, this was the 1 week that all major news kind of paid attention to video games, and that just doesn't seem to happen anymore.
Yeah, I think we had discussed this last year too, where it's cheaper for a lot of these companies to just do their own show and stream it online. And the one thing that just occurred to me though, I was thinking about comic conventions in combination with E3. Obviously, there's a lot of sponsorship that goes into hosting something like San Diego Comic-Con or E3, where there's a lot of advertisers that they all make a lot of money off of. Mainly the convention, but you do see sometimes there's some cross-branding deals with some of the gaming companies or some of the comic companies.
Yeah, some profit sharing and stuff like that.
So do you think that there's any pressure from the advertisers to well, look, I know you're trying to do your own thing online, but when this is all over, we need to get back to a physical presence, because they want to make sure that they put in, the Mountain Dew logo on the Xbox swag bag or whatever it is, or at Comic-Con, there's always all kinds of freebies and stands. You always see Geico out of all things at fucking MegaCon. They have a huge thing and people show up there for the free t-shirt or cup. Yeah. So do you think that there's any advertising pressure, because they can't really do much when Nintendo, for example, does a Nintendo Direct?
I don't know that pressure is the right word. I would say that there's probably a good amount of the advertisers that enjoy the opportunity to go to the. I mean, really, the reason that there's a Geico thing in MegaCon is because there's a lot of people in MegaCon. If there wasn't a lot of people at MegaCon, Geico wouldn't bother with the money to put the stand up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they can't put those advertising dollars somewhere else and get, probably even more eyes. As far as like, if you can spend that much money on, like, say, a Twitter campaign, you probably get more visits than, going to a convention.
Yeah, it was something I was curious about. We're now seeing something, this headline really surprised me, and I know that the Switch has done incredibly well, but I worked and lived through the Nintendo Wii era. Like, I was working at GameStop during that whole thing. The Nintendo Switch has now surpassed the Wii in lifetime console sales, and in less time, obviously. The Nintendo DS still remains the best-selling platform that Nintendo has ever made at roughly 154 million units. But Nintendo Switch, I think from the article I was seeing, they were at the 120-ish million mark. So there's a pretty good chance that they will reach the really close numbers that are the DS, especially with the supply chain issues that are going on right now. There's probably not as many, the number that they could have sold, we haven't reached yet, I don't think. And,
Yeah, no.
and as I was saying, GameStop, people would come into the store anytime there'd be shipment, and they'd be hounding me for like, okay, are those the Nintendo Wiis? I'd answer the phone like, thank you for calling GameStop. We are currently sold out of Wiis. This is Daniel. How can I help you? And it's like, that's what I called for, or they would just hang up, because it was always that. And at one point, the manager was like, just don't answer the phone anymore. Like, we're not answering any phone calls. We're just going to let it ring. Sometimes he would unplug it. If he knew that the DM was going to call, like if there was like a conference call, he would then plug it back in. But otherwise, like, it got really bad. So for me to see this, maybe I'm unplugged from the whole situation on the Nintendo Switch, but it really floors me.
Honestly, it's not too surprising when you think about it. A lot of the Wii was kind of an anomaly for it being the main system that sold that well. Most other Nintendo's best-selling, like, the consoles are the handhelds, which the Switch kind of provides both. One thing I am kind of curious about is the number of, standard Switches or Switch OLEDs compared to Switch Lites that are going out the door. Nintendo handhelds generally tend to do better, like the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, DS being the most popular one they ever made so far. I mean, I can see this taking that number pretty easily. It's still really early in the Switch's lifetime too, which is really cool. But also, people like Nintendo handhelds, and the Switch Lite, especially being a handheld, exclusively. And then if you want to spend more money, you can get the larger Switch and play it on your TV too. It's kind of bringing two lines of their products into one, which I think is partly responsible for the impressive sales.
So I have a couple questions here for you. First, do you think the OLED sold less than the Lite? Is that why you were kind of curious as to what those two would be compared at?
I would say so. Simply because the Switch Lite is cheaper. Most people will buy that one for their kids versus the OLED. The OLED is more for, I would say, older people who are buying their own Switch. I don't see a lot of parents getting that because, if your kid's 10, do you really care if they have a little extra screen real estate? No, right. You want that for you. Also, you have probably maybe one Switch OLED LED in a household if there is one. And I mean, I have a friend who, they've got two kids in the house and they each have their own Switch Lite.
There you go. Just like a handheld, as you were saying.
Yeah.
With how well the Switch has done, this is probably, and I know Nintendo likes to do something innovative and different each time they do a console. It's kind of like the evolve or die type of mentality. And some say that the Wii U, obviously the name being a big problem marketing-wise, was one of the... It tried to do what the Switch has done more successfully as far as like having it handheld at least only in your home. It was kind of limited in that aspect, but it was an early version of what the Switch is now.
Yeah.
But in spite of Nintendo's history of wanting to do something different or innovate in the console market, do you think that for the next console, will they stick to the handheld only / you can plug it into your TV thing? Do you think they'll go back to a regular console and a handheld? I mean, what direction would you go in?
Honestly, I would just take the same concept and make it more powerful. Like, I don't see a reason to switch from, ironically, to change from this format. It's working really well for them, and it also, as you can see, I mean, it's getting a lot of sales. The Wii was a massive success for them. I had to go to Costco to get one back in the day. Like GameStop, like all of those Walmarts were like all just sold out. I found one at a Costco. So when you got to buy a membership to find a console, that says a lot. It was crazy though. Like, parents had them.
Well, that's the thing. That's what surprises me is that the Switch is not a general audience seller. It's not grandpa and grandma coming into my GameStop and trying to find the Switch, because that happened with the Wii. Uncles,
Yeah.
aunts, parents. The Switch is purely for gamers and maybe kids. I don't know if it's that maybe it flip-flopped where the Wii, it appealed so much to the general audience that the gamers kind of felt like they were being brushed aside. But in this case, the gamers are buying the Switch and parents and grandparents, old people, they're not. It ended up being a bigger market in the end.
That's a good question.
But it's like
I
you
would say
said
the
too,
Wii definitely appealed more to, because I mean, I knew people that had a Wii just for like a DVD player or Netflix.
or just bowling, yeah, like that. They
Yeah,
only owned the
like
Wii
they
Sports.
only
and that was
owned
it.
bowling. I knew a guy, he was an older dude, and he had it just for like the Tiger Woods golf because he thought it was really cool that you could swing the remote.
Right. I think you nailed it though, and the fact that it is a handheld, the Switch, where you're going to find households that are going to have multiple ones of these, whereas the Wii, you're only going to generally have one per household back
Yeah,
then.
exactly.
And here, every sibling needs to have their Switch. To me, like Kelly and I don't barely play it, but Kelly plays the Switch for Pokemon Snap, and I don't see us like, oh, well, you're going to have your own Switch and I'll have mine. Like, I still see that system as, well, put it on. That's the system. That's our Switch. I guess if you have siblings that want to take it on the go, which is not how I played the Switch whenever I do,
Right.
then yeah, you want to have each kid, okay, here's your Switch Lite, here's yours. You guys most people don't play it on the TV anyway. I'm kind of in the minority in that. I think Nintendo stat was like less than 10% of people play it docked. So
Yeah, honestly, that was the way I played it though. Like that's my most popular one. Although I will say, it's nice. I can come in my office. I have the dock and have it all set up, and I can dock it and play it on my computer monitor. But if I need to go, sit in the bedroom or something like that, I can pick it up and take it with me. Like that part's great.
yeah, that's the transition I never made. Like I'm like, this little screen, I can't do it.
Yeah,
Even though I've
honestly,
played DSs and all.
I always saw it more as a handheld console that you could hook up to your TV than a TV console that you could pick up and take with you.
Yeah, that's definitely what it is now, even with these new iterations, because you look at the graphics when you put it on your TV, they look fine, but I imagine if you have an OLED, like it probably looks phenomenal on there, even though the games aren't quite yet taking advantage of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's brighter. It's, I think it's a little bit higher resolution, but I mean, it's still not, pushing. Nintendo, one smart thing they did is they kind of stopped competing with Xbox and PlayStation as far as like that market. And it's really worked for them. I mean, their target audience is Nintendo fans and younger kids.
Absolutely. When I saw that, like the Wii, for example, that was kind of a big deal that it wasn't in 1080p right out the gate.
Yeah.
And they were like, look, one, we're not competing with other consoles, but two, we're saved. This fucking thing was what, $250 when it launched?
Yeah,
compared
it was
to
like
the
199. Yeah, it was like 199 or something like that.
Pretty
It was crazy.
amazing. Pretty, yeah.
But also, too, they kind of made up for that with the, you had to have multiple Wiimotes if you wanted to play together. And like, the accessories on it were, I would say, more necessary.
That's true.
Also, with the Wiimote, there was so many like weird attachments you could put on it that weren't required, but people, like, I knew people that had like the tennis rackets and the golf clubs. And I'm like, you don't need that stuff.
Dude, I sold so many Mario wheels or racing wheels.
Oh God, and it was so bad. It was awful. Oh my! I had to play Mario Kart on the Wii. I had to have was it the classic controller? Yeah, what it was called that you plugged into the Wiimote.
Right. Yeah, because it's not the same when you're playing.
No.
And a lot of games suffered because of that. But yeah, those fucking accessories, man, we made so much money on them.
I would say they probably made more money off the accessories than they did the system.
100%. People like Pelican were probably like, we're good for years, because I remember they used to be a thing. They coasted along. Just the protection for the remotes as well.
Yeah.
The screen
oh yeah, like the little jelly things.
Yeah.
They didn't come with those, and then you had the Wii Motion Plus that you had to buy that like attached to your Wiimote, but made it better. And like, it was a wild system as far as accessories went.
Yeah. Well, here's another milestone in gaming. This one I was really happy with. Microsoft's Xbox Series X and S is the fastest selling Xbox console ever. Xbox had a very strong December with the Series X placing second in terms of overall console sales, came up short against the Nintendo Switch that month, which it's not surprising. But that's pretty awesome. Like, I know the Xbox is relatively young, I guess, compared to Nintendo or to a point Sony, but that's still a huge milestone because the Xbox has been overall a successful line for Microsoft. They're here to stay as a gaming pillar, I think,
Yeah,
for the
I
time.
don't think they're going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. So this being their best-selling console, yes, supply and demand is rampant everywhere, and this is kind of a year or a couple years that are making anomalies happen. But overall, I mean, you've got to enjoy that peak and that success.
I mean, honestly, I think one of the main things that helped them a lot is the Series S. I mean, for $300, if you're a casual gamer, you can play all the same games. They're digital only. You pair that with Game Pass,
Yep.
and you're off to the races. If you got a kid, like, I realize that most of us are adults and we play video games, and that's kind of how we look at the lens. But as a parent, if you're not really into games, but your kid wants a new system, and you're looking at a PS5 for $500, or this Xbox that'll play Fortnite, for 300, and they can play whatever else they want, and you can sign up for basically the Netflix for video games and not have to go to GameStop all the time. I mean, it's a winning combination for most people.
So let me ask you something about Game Pass. Is it something that you have to install each game that you play on it, or can you stream it like you mentioned as like Netflix?
You can actually do both. So I use it mostly on my PC because I don't have an X or an S yet. I still have my Xbox One, but most of the games that Microsoft is putting out are cross-play. That you can play them on PC or Xbox, which is another really good idea in their part, because game companies don't usually make a whole lot of money on the systems. They make money off games. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft, if they can get you to subscribe to Game Pass and you get games on your Xbox or you have them on your computer, then, they're still getting that $15 a month. So on that, and I believe on the consoles as well, you can, if you want to say you just want to try out a game, you can stream it, and it works really well. Again, depending on your internet connection. But you can also stream it on your phone. Like, it's a weird system as far as like an ecosystem goes for video games. It's kind of new, and I really enjoy it. But you can also install the game to your system if you decide that you like it, or you just like, oh no, I'm definitely going to play this whole thing, and I don't want to deal with any like connection issues or anything like that. You can install it to the hard drive of the system.
Yeah, because that was my main question was, if it's the cheaper console, $300, then it probably doesn't. You can tell what era I came from. It doesn't come with a lot of memory. So like, I'm like, well, I mean, Game Pass, is that really going to work for me? But if I can stream anything for $300 and not need to install every single game I want to play,
exactly,
that is a hell of a deal.
Yeah, and it's a great secondary. Yeah, I think it comes with like 512 gigs, which I mean is not a ton, but I think it also does, it does like 1080p out, but it does the ray tracing and all the other goodies. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is not as powerful as the Series, but again, it depends on how you game. If you're more casual about it and you don't mind, less than the absolute best graphics, then it's a great deal. And also, I believe now, pretty recently, Xbox changed the servers that the game streamed from to be Series X equivalent.
Oh, nice.
So, I mean, it's going to depend on your connection speed and how you have it set up to, do you want it to look prettier, or do you want it to, perform a little bit better? But yeah, no, the streaming looks good. It's really responsive. I wouldn't necessarily play certain games on it. Like racing games can be a little challenging if you hit lag, because there is a little bit of an input delay. But I mean, I think Madden was up there during the beta. I played most of Psychonauts 2 streaming. I know Bobby's played quite a few games on the streaming thing. Just nice to be able to pick it up, go, okay, now I want to play this now, and it just comes up.
Yeah. It's one of their best sellers for sure. Whenever anyone talks about Game Pass or Xbox at all, they're 9 times out of 10, they probably have Game Pass as well. The attach rate has to be really high.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
Also, I think one other thing Xbox did that what I thought was really smart is for the X or S, they have something called Xbox All Access, and I think for the S, it's like $24 a month for like 2 years, and you get the console and Game Pass included in that.
There you go.
So, like, you're paying an extra $10 a month or so, as opposed to just having Game Pass, and you get a console to go with it.
This news story showed up first. I thought it was, I side with how things went, but it's something to laugh about. 2 LA Police Department officers were fired for playing Pokemon Go and ignoring a robbery call in 2017. They failed in their bids to regain their jobs. According to the appeal, Louis Lozano and Eric Mitchell purposefully ignored a commanding officer's request for backup during a robbery and played Pokemon Go instead. Both officers were terminated from employment with LAPD following a unanimous vote to fire them. They appealed their case, arguing the digital in-car video system recording should not have been used as evidence and that their procedural rights were violated when their patrol supervisor questioned them without an opportunity to have a legal representative. I read a little bit more into the story. They were actually the closest ones to a mall, and one of the officers inside the mall was calling for backup on a robbery, and
Right.
they drove away from the mall outside of their on-foot jurisdiction or area that they were set to patrol because there was a Snorlax that had popped up. And then, according to the footage inside their vehicle, they then found a Togechick. They're like, oh, let's go get that one too. And then they excitedly drove off and caught that Pokemon as well. And you can see in the footage, according to the report, that they were excited to have caught that Pokemon too, and that they talked about Pokemon for 30 minutes instead of doing, I guess, what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah. What's ironic about this whole thing, though, is they got in trouble because it was a commanding officer or another officer that requested backup. One thing a lot of people don't understand is, like, if it was just a guy who was being robbed who, like, called to them for help, they're not actually under a legal obligation to assist you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, there was a Supreme Court case a while back in New York. There was a serial killer. I forget who it was, but he got, like, basically beaten almost to death by this guy trying to, like, help catch him.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 cops just stood there until he was, like, already almost subdued, waiting for backup to arrive. And he ended up suing them. And the court said, that, no, they're not really under an obligation to help you. They can wait for backup. Like, really? But yeah, no. And then to try to get your job back based on, like, well, you really shouldn't have used that as evidence against us. Like, okay, but you still did it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that was my main thing is I wouldn't want to get hired back because it's like you're always going to be that officer that was playing Pokemon Go instead of they're always going to keep their eye on you 100%.
You walk in the locker room and they're like, hey, Snorlax, what's up?
They're always going to, and I'm sure other officers played at the time or still play and they catch them. I'm sure it
ignore a
happens.
call.
Exactly. At one point, it's like, come on, you're not doing the basics, And apparently they had even switched the call to show that they were supposedly in a different area and not where they were supposed to be. Like they gave a different area code, however that works.
Yeah.
So they were just being all kinds of shady.
Yeah, no, that's weird. You know what I'm kind of curious about? How long were these guys cops?
That's another question. Yeah.
Like, I wonder if they were kind of newer, because I know, like, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of, like, resignations, and police departments have been desperate for, like a lot of other industries, trying to get people to come in and be cops. It's, not an easy job. It's not a very thankful job. I wonder if these guys were newer and just really didn't want to be cops, but just kind of fell into it or something weird like that.
Well, apparently they were still wanting to be cops and absolutely failed on the bid. Yeah.
Well, no, they wanted to be employed. They didn't necessarily want to be cops.
Oh, okay, I see what you're
saying. They wanted to be employed by the police department and still make money. They obviously didn't want to be cops.
What do you think about that appeal of don't use the in-car video system? I mean, that's in there so that they can use them for cases like this.
It's an evidence gathering thing that you're aware is on.
Yeah.
Also, like, if your patrol supervisor questioned them without an opportunity to have legal representation, then you don't answer the questions.
Right.
If you want it, you have the same rights. Like, you see it all the time on TV, and it's accurate. Like, cops try to ask you questions, you can be like, not until my lawyer is present.
That's all you got to do.
Or in this case, honestly, it'd probably be less a lawyer and more a union rep.
You know, if Scott Snorlax is his favorite Pokemon, he'd be like, "Give them their job back." It's a Snorlax.
All right. I mean, I can understand. Do you want to go to a robbery or do you want to catch a Snorlax? I mean, it's
Both decisions were right in my head. Give them their job back. Oh, Mr.
Yeah.
Scott, nope, we're done. Get out.
no. Judge Scott.
Yeah.
That would be an internet TV show I would watch.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of hentai, a lot of anime, some Snorlax. I'm in.
Yeah, but I just want them to bring like internet drama to him.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like Keemstar, right?
Yeah, like Keem, but like with Scott's opinions. He'd be like, "What, are you stupid?"
Another court case is coming up here as Invincible colorist William Crabtree. He is suing Robert Kirkman over the animated series Prophet. William is claiming that he was talked into giving up his copyright co-ownership on Invincible to make the project easier to show to studios. According to Crabtree's claim, that resulted in him losing out on future profits as the franchise grew to include things like an animated streaming series. I've seen action figures already based on the animated series, not on the comic. So there's a lot of kind of like what happened with Kubert and Jack Kirby when it came to Stan Lee and Stan Lee taking credit so he can get more checks for the work. And in this case, it's a more modern type of era on this. And, you know, I want to side with him, especially with William, because I don't like Amazon, and I'm sure Kirkman and Amazon would in some way pay up for those profits or whatever. But at the same time, I have seen where creators will give up their characters' rights or their comic book rights, and then suddenly it'll become a thing, and then they sue after the fact, like, well, if I had known, I wouldn't have. And sometimes they win, sometimes they lose.
Yeah,
You know,
that's where I got like a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Like you signed the deal.
That's the problem. But there have been cases where they will compensate them. They'll give them a couple $100,000 or whatever, and they'll settle it. I think that's probably how it'll go here.
It's probably how it'll go, but like if you want, there's a way to relinquish your copyright or co-ownership or whatever of the copyright, and still be like, okay, but like if this does this, I still get, like, you know, you can build that into the contract where they purchase your ownership of the copyright.
Yeah, that's very true. It hurts. It sucks. I feel for William. You could say that maybe there was some bad intention on Robert's part, or he was legitimately saying it will be easier for us to pitch this thing that hasn't been a massive seller. I mean, it was out. The story was finished for years before it got picked up by Amazon. And I would rarely find anyone that would go through the Invincible back issues, to be honest with you, at the comic shop. The only reason we carried the Invincible trade paperbacks was because it is the owner's favorite comic series. So he's like, make sure there's always at least one of, because if anything, I can hand sell it to customers. And I'm like, yep, great. But it wasn't until the show came out that everyone suddenly was looking for the trades. They were looking for the back issues, and it worked out on our end because we already had a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where I didn't see it blowing up quite the way it did or the way it has. And I don't think William saw that happening. I don't think even Robert Kirkman saw it happening, even with the success of The Walking Dead. So there was a lot of, that'll never happen. Oh, shit.
Yeah, I'm sure that was the case. I think if Invincible hadn't been picked up by Amazon and hadn't been turned into a show, like, well, one, there wouldn't be any profits for him to be suing over. But, like, he wouldn't come back and be like, hey, can I get that copyright back?
That's true. Yeah, you
like,
wouldn't
he's
hear
doing
about
it because there's money now.
Of course. There's money that he sees he might have definitely lost out on. Probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. Plus, depending on who knows how big this show really gets over the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's entirely true, too. I mean, it's only season 1's come out.
That's it. But it's already like memed like crazy. People are talking about it.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Like, I like the comic. I watched the show and then I went back and started reading the comic, and it was, in my opinion, better, but that's often the case.
Mm-hmm. Especially when they take liberties with the story and change some things to better fit the season or the episode. I can totally see that happening. There's another show coming out, another animated series. This is the one that I'm so excited for. It's called Batman the Caped Crusader. Bruce Timm is attached to it. It looks like Batman the Animated Series if it was set in the 20s. So, comic writer Ed Brubaker, who wrote Captain America Winter Soldier, another creator actually, who he's talked about in the past famously how Marvel has screwed him out of profits for the Winter Soldier. And I don't know what kind of contract he signed with them, but he talks about constantly where people would ask him all the time about, did you see the Winter Soldier movie? Did you see the Winter Soldier show with the Falcon? And he would see kids dressed up in Halloween costumes, dressed as Winter Soldier. And he'd be like, what the fuck? Like, it's at my doorstep as merch, literally. And I'm not seeing a single penny.
Yeah.
So he's gotten
Well,
pretty bitter about it too.
that's why you've got to be really careful about these contracts you sign with these large companies. They have a lot of lawyers to figure out how to maximize their profit out of it.
Well, Brubaker, maybe he signed a better contract with Warner Brothers DC because he has reportedly joined the crew of Batman the Caped Crusader. He will be serving as a head writer and executive producer on the 10-episode first season. Brubaker explained in a statement, quote, "Here's something few people know, but the original Batman the Animated Series was one of the things that made me want to write superhero comics in general and Batman in particular," end quote. I know a lot of people. I'm a DC fan because of Batman the Animated Series, and who knows what the waves are as far as like generations of creators now that are in superheroes because of Batman the Animated Series. And here's just one example of it. Wouldn't have Batman or Captain America the Winter Soldier without Batman the Animated Series. This is a guy that was inspired by the animated series to join this world and to get into it. And honestly, he's done a hell of a job as a writer. So I see him doing some great things on Caped Crusader.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good match, honestly. I'm super excited for the show. I love the animated series, as you know. Yeah, no, the more people talent that they can bring into it, the better, in my opinion. Just as long as they stick with the plan and don't let people come in and start changing things.
Will it be a little weird seeing a Bruce Timmified Batman, pretty much an animated series Batman, because that's what he does and that's what the series was based on? And if they don't get Kevin Conroy, like a different voice coming out of Batman's face, is that going to be weird for you too?
That's going to be so weird.
Yeah.
Like,
that's not Batman.
Honestly, I have a big problem like when they change voice actors for I don't watch a ton of the animated movies, although I do think that overall the animated movies for DC are better than the live action movies, with obvious exceptions. But like when they change voice actors, because if I do watch them, I'll watch like one and then another, and then I'll pick up another, and like just the voice is changing. Like that always kind of bothered me. But Batman is such an iconic voice.
Yeah, it's one of those things where people always say, well, it can't just be Kevin every time. And I'm like, yeah, it can. Why not?
Yes, it can. Why not?
Is he dead? What, is he sick or something? Like, what's going on?
Did he lose his voice?
You know, he's up to it.
Surgeries for that now.
Yeah, there's a software that I use called The Script, and there's this weird module thing there where after so many files that you upload of the podcast onto it, it can replicate your voice, and you have to like agree to like, hey, the software can do these things, agree that it's all right, and you can say yes. And then you can type out sentences and it'll say it in your voice. Now, it's not perfect because the inflections are going to be different. It's kind of like, but that technology is there and it can get better.
There.
So if Kevin Conroy can just give his okay for after he's dead, like, look, you can here's a bunch of voice samples of my voice. You have all of it in media and video games and cartoons. Take all of that, put it into a computer, and if you can recreate my voice, you have my permission to use it in future projects. Just give my next of kin the profits, this percentage or whatever. And you can theoretically have fucking Batman from now until the end of time.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've seen stuff like that where somebody took an AI bot and they uploaded like every Joe Rogan podcast and made it talk like Joe Rogan. Like they even had it to the point where like they would type in a sentence and it would change the words to sound more like something Joe Rogan would say. Like it's but also can you think of somebody who has like that much of their voice available to feed into a machine?
That's true. If you're going to get anyone's most accurately, it's probably going to be someone like him.
Yeah, him or, another like Mark Maron or, like a lot of those OG podcasters that have like, hundreds and hundreds of episodes, and his episodes are like hours long. It's not like, he's got like, 500 something or whatever episodes, but it's way more than that, honestly. But they're each like hours.
I
Like
almost want to, yeah.
the opportunity for and then you get into like the whole like deep fake thing where like they're starting to be able to do that with video now.
Right, with the faces. I mean, you see it in movies now.
Yeah. I mean, that's not exactly cutting edge technology anymore. Like you can do that with programs just on your computer and have it be passable. There's people that make like entire Instagram accounts of just doing deepfakes.
During when I edit this episode, I'm going to input an example, like right after this, of here's an example of me typing. It's just so that they can hear how
Yeah. No, that
accurate it
sounds
can be.
interesting.
This here is the example of the voice. We got some Ben Affleck news here, as in an interview on Howard Stern, he revealed he was hurt by the online reaction to his initial casting as Batman in BVS. He said, quote, "I was hurt. I was less hurt than I would have been 10 years earlier, but I was hurt because I felt like, wait a minute, come on, what do I got to do? You know what I mean? Now they got this thing. Everybody's going to do a petition. You're really 100,000 signatures. You signed the fucking petition like you have anything better to do with your day than sign petitions. But ironically, the reason I did this is I wanted to do a movie for my kids, particularly my son, that they would see and be proud of." End quote. Do you remember that backlash, that
Oh
internet
yeah.
reaction when Ben Affleck was cast?
I'll be honest, I had my doubts when he was originally cast. Like, I mean, I didn't go sign a petition saying, like, don't hire him or anything like that. But I was like, I don't know. Because, like, if you looked at most of his movies to that point, like, I didn't see Bruce Wayne.
I see what you're
Like,
saying.
most of it is, like, Ben Affleck playing Ben Affleck.
I think he had just come off of Argo when
Yeah.
that had happened. And it was like,
Yeah.
at that time, and people can go back and listen to the episode where Kelly and I react to that, the casting. Because I reminded Kelly throughout the years, because, there was there almost happened a revision of history where I was like, no, you were against it. And I was like, let's just wait and see. I was in the middle. I was like, I'm not for it. I'm not against it. I'm like, let's just wait and see, because the people freaked out when Joker in The Dark Knight was cast. People were saying, we're going to get a gay Joker. That was the main thing people kept saying.
Yeah. No, I remember that. It was just, and then, that Joker was one of the best Jokers
Exactly right. So that was,
happened. And honestly, I'd say Ben Affleck he's up there as far as movie Batmans.
people considering him the best live action Batman up to this point. And
I would disagree with that personally, but I'm a huge Batman Begins trilogy fan. I really liked Christian Bale's Batman.
They're great movies. I like Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne a lot. It's just his Batman wasn't as Batman as Ben Affleck's. Like Ben's is very comic accurate. It's
that I would
to
yeah,
right.
And also like the voice changing thing that they did in the Christian Bale Batmans, like it was a little over the top, but I mean, I would say he was a really good Bruce Wayne for sure, and a good Batman. But I mean, my favorite's still Keaton, like overall.
Oh, well, they got this Flash movie coming out in November that you can check out. You can see 70-year-old Keaton.
I'm good.
They didn't get you? Man, not even Keaton Batman fans are coming out to see this fucking movie.
No. No, I'm good on that one. I just, like, I'm at the point with the Snyder Cut stuff that, like, I'm not going to go and be, like, super active about it on Twitter like I was, a while ago. But I don't care for what they're doing.
Oh, no, so hell no.
I'm not going to support it.
No, and things are quiet until the Discovery merger happens, and I think that's when things are really going to fire up again. He's got to have a deal already in place for Zach to be putting in all these crazy hints of like, oh, look, Infinite Crisis, and it's like, okay, you must have already signed something with Discovery.
I have a feeling he probably did, and I hope we get it. I do hope that it happens, and if they want to run a multiverse situation, I'm fine with that as long as the movies that I would like to see come out. But yeah, I'm not gonna just. It's not the thing that people got to understand is DC fans are not the same as MCU fans, where like they'll just watch anything that Disney puts up. Oh well, okay, it's an MCU movie. We've got to go see it. Like, no, I'm not into that. Like, if it looks like a good movie and it's something I want to see, then I'll go see it.
That's the problem, is they don't realize that the people I don't know who they think they're appealing to I guess they think that they can get MCU numbers by going in the direction they're going with, of like Batgirl is going to be the new Batman. We're going to get rid of Henry Cavill and it's going to be Supergirl. And it's like, these bloggers and reviewers are the only people that are seeing these movies, and it's because they get invited to go to these fucking premieres for free. Their fans and little followers don't go out and pay tickets to watch these movies, just like we saw in Birds of Prey and The Suicide Squad.
Well, that's also like, look at the MCU though. Like their last few movies where it was like, you know, trying to do this like woman empowerment thing, like they didn't do so hot. You know what movie like brought them back was the one with 3 white guys saving the day.
That's true.
Like people want to see Spider-Man, and then when you give them the 3 Spider-Men, so that no matter which one is your favorite, you get to see it. That's what people wanted.
I think on that end, they're going to start seeing a lot of change in profits for sure when it comes to like, all right, here's the new Thor. And it's like, all right, well, I saw this happen in the comics. It was called All New, All Different Marvel, and that line did not do well.
Yeah.
Sam Wilson was the new Captain America, and guess what? That book did not sell. So I think it's going to happen as well on the movie side. Not right away, but we're going to see that gradual decrease.
Yeah, I think it's going to end up falling off. But like also, I'm sorry, Haley Steinfeld as Hawkeye.
I'm sorry? Oh, you're talking about the She-Hawkeye that they're...
the new Hawkeye?
Okay.
Like, really? She
Kate Bishop, right?
Yeah, like she doesn't even look like she could beat up a dude.
Well, neither did the comic one either. Although, what's his name? Jeremy Renner doesn't. Like,
well, he does more. but like, it's just, I don't know. I'm not into the whole like changing everything to suit whatever, you know, political motivations are going on at the moment. Like, it's just make good movies. Just give people what they want to see. It's not like you're making like, you know, high-end cinema. It's just fan service. So give the fans what they want.
Maybe they're pulling a new Coke thing where it's like, oh shit, the people don't like the new heroes. Oh, here's Captain America again. Chris Evans is back.
Iron Man
Look.
Classic.
Yeah. And then that's what they're pulling, and that'll make them even more profit in the future. The last news story I have here comes from CEO Greg Silverman. He's currently with Stampede Ventures, but he was previously the president, creative development, and worldwide production for Warner Brothers. He responded to a fan's tweet, and he's been doing a lot of positive Restore the Snyderverse stuff. He responded to a tweet which suggested that if someone other than Zack's name had been on Man of Steel and BVS, even with the exact same films being released, they would have been received less poorly by critics. And he said, quote, "I couldn't agree more. My suspicion always was that Zack's kindness, openness, and enthusiasm created an environment for critics to undervalue his work. Because he is a decent, approachable, humble human, he didn't fit the mold of an auteur. Shitty. Should be the opposite." End quote. Do you subscribe to this too? If it had been like, say, James Gunn's Man of Steel and it was the exact same movie, do you think it would have been better received?
I think for James Gunn, it would have been a departure because it's a good movie. For some reason, Zack Snyder's always had a lot of animus as far as critics and reviewers, mostly because it seems like he just really doesn't care what they have to say. Yeah, I could say that this is pretty accurate. I don't know that James Gunn would be the...
Let's say Nolan's then. Let's say it's Nolan's Man of Steel.
If they'd put Nolan's name on it, yeah, I think that would have been accurate. Like, there's certain people, like, you know, you couldn't say, oh, an M. Night Shyamalan Batman and have it be the same movie and people are like, oh, yeah, no, this tracks. I think Zack's got a lot of, I don't know if enemies are the right word, but a lot of people that just don't care for his brand. So whenever he comes out with anything, there's a lot of people that just want to hate on it.
People always accuse him of being someone who hates women or who hates minorities or reason. And what did they call him? Rondian? Based on his work and some of the pieces that show up in his film, some of the themes, they accuse him of all of these things. But then everyone that talks about him, that's worked with him or that's obviously produced some of his work, like Greg here, they say nothing but nice things about the guy.
Yeah.
It's just like, and even Zack was talking about it last year when he was talking about the Snyder Cut, and he's like, I'm just trying to finish this movie now, and you're still standing in my way. And he's like, I'm not a jerk about it. I'm just like, why are they so against me just finishing this thing that they came back and asked me to finish? More than likely, AT&T told him to, hey, go get Zack and have him finish this movie because there's a demand for it. And They were like dragging their feet and they didn't want to. That's probably why. But Zach's like, I don't think I'm a jerk.
Zach's just like, I like him. Everything I've seen of him, he seems just like a nice, genuine guy. There are a awful lot of conspiracy theories about him, though.
Like, which
You know
ones?
what I mean? Like, well, with the whole like, oh, all these symbols and stuff in his movies, like, I don't know, maybe I just don't look for that stuff.
He is one of those directors that, and some actors don't like this. They're meticulous about shots or what's in there. Like he'll draw out the shots and he'll
Yeah,
put them in there. And some cinematographers don't like that, but obviously he works with the same one, so they get his craft and they'll follow it.
right. Which is, honestly a good way to do it. You work with the team that's familiar with what you want, you get better results. It's like
So
building anything.
finding those symbols in his movies, like even to this day, people will still find shit from Man of Steel, like the whole line in BVS of Lex saying the son of a witch must be burned or so. Like he has that line about burning Martha Kent, but then if you look at Man of Steel, the last shot of the House of L, it's just burning up in lava and in explosions. So literally his mom burned to death. So there's like all of these things that are still being discovered in this movie that were obviously intentional because there's so many of them, so many
Yeah, no,
connections and
they're
throwbacks.
super deep. I don't know. It's just good story building, in my opinion. Like he's with the cinematography. I don't think there's anybody out there that's kind of in his same class. Like he's got a specific style. It works for what he does, and he does it well.
When you were saying conspiracy, I'm like, is he Illuminati? You were talking about symbols. I'm like, where's
I
the
mean, I've
Illuminati?
seen stuff about that, and he's was it an anti-feminist or whatever they're called, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe he hires plenty of women, and they all seem to work with him fine. Like I've never heard any, accusations like I've heard about other people that work in movie industries about him.
Yeah, the people that are pointing the fingers are usually fans of people that end up being shitty, like Joss Whedon
Yeah.
or Pedo Gunn. It's kind of weird.
Or God, what was his name? The one that Natalie Portman came out and said that we need to bring him back. He's like exiled to France or something like that.
Oh, I don't know. Another director?
Yeah. And I mean, he was actually like, I think, charged.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of people in that industry that do some horrible stuff, and he doesn't seem to be one of them, which honestly, if you look at it from a certain perspective, maybe that's why he's hated so much.
Could be.
They don't have the blackmail.
We were all like, Greg, can you be the president again of Warner Brothers? Like, can we just move you on over from Stampede?
Right? Or, hey, Discovery, hire this man.
Yeah, that'd be crazy if he ended up like Discovery's like, hey, you're back. Suit up.
Call Zach. We're going in.
There's always that joke of like Ben still saying like, no, I'm done with franchise films and I'm done with Batman. But then as soon as he gets that call from Zach, he's fucking back.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, all the guys that were on that movie, and Gal, Ben, Henry, all of them seem to absolutely love him. That's why they were willing to come in for reshoots, years later.
That does round out the last news story for us this week. Now we close out the show with the Broket Block, which is what Jarrod and I have been doing, how we've been feeling in Jarrod's case, and going on during the week. So Jarrod, on your side, it's been about a month and a half since you were last on. What's been going on?
Oh, mostly work, honestly. It's been getting crazy the last little bit. Month and a half. So that was before Christmas. So we did that. I successfully convinced my father-in-law that we should do wings for Christmas instead of a turkey because Thanksgiving and Christmas are just so close together. So we went there for the holiday and had a good time, and Liam's been having a lot of fun with his toys and presents and all that, and just kind of doing normal stuff. And then this past week, Friday, I think her dad tested positive for COVID of some sort. Although I think from what it sounds like, it's the Omicron one. So I'm not like super concerned. And her brother, one of the guys in the dental lab that they work, came down with it, and it's kind of a small work environment. So, then my wife's not feeling too good. My son woke up with a fever the other day, and I'm kind of, got the scratchy throat and all that. So it's just, it's a cold so far, luckily.
It looks like you and I are on the same boat. Leo had stomach issues about a week ago, and he got over that in about 2 days. Then Kelly caught something. She never went in to get tested, but she has a fever, she has a cough, and so she's working from home.
Yeah.
And she's able to do that. And then Leo yesterday started throwing up again, and we're like, oh shit. And then 3 days ago, I had stomach issues. I was like, okay, I probably just caught Leo's stomach bug because whatever he gets, I get usually a day or two later.
That's parenthood.
That is. So whatever shitty disease is crawling around in schools, he's bringing it home. So
Yep.
my stomach wasn't great. I didn't eat at all on Saturday. Might have been Sunday. So I was just like, yeah, my stomach was like, we're just gonna shit that out immediately. So don't even fill this. Like, you have no appetite. Why are you even trying to eat? And
Oh yeah,
like,
no,
all right,
I hate that feeling too, where they're like, because I had that the other day where it was just going to go right through me, but like you still kind of have to eat. You know what I mean? Like, especially trying to convince a 5-year-old that like, yes, I know that you're not hungry, but you do have to eat things because you're sick, and that's how you get better, and that kind of thing. That was a trick and a half.
I took the opposite approach where finally I listened to my stomach and I'm like, fine, I'm not going to eat for a whole fucking day. And I felt fine. I didn't feel weak at all. Like, my boss was like, don't you feel weak at all? And I'm like, not yet. I'm fine. I went to the gym this morning and my stomach's still not 100%, but I'm like, all right, well, I don't have the headache anymore that comes with the stomach bug. So that's gone. I'm probably on the upswing. I'm more worried about Leo now because he's now come down with a fever. So more than likely what Kelly has. Plus he's throwing up. So he's got the double whammy on there. Maybe I'll catch whatever they have soon after. I'll tell you next week, but
It's usually how it works.
Yeah, no, I feel you, man. I feel exactly where you're at.
It's not been too bad though.
You had mentioned some people being out of work earlier in the week.
Mhm.
With that, has it been because of the disease?
They're being pretty precautionary, which I can understand. If you have symptoms, you don't go into work, whether you've tested positive or not. You got to quarantine for a certain amount of days usually. If you tell them, which I know certain people haven't been. But, it is what it is. We're down on staff. I think everybody's down on staff right now. I know Bobby was talking about having to close his shop temporarily because you just don't have the people to open. And unfortunately for me, I work in an industry where that's not a possibility.
How many businesses do you think? I think we had talked about how so many things are probably slipping through the cracks, right? We talked about that last time you were on. But now I'm wondering how many businesses get complaints like, oh man, this employee was kind of mean. And they're like, yeah, well, we need people though. So.
Yeah, well, he showed up. So, yeah.
You got your burger, didn't you?
I mean, I work in the grocery industry. And I mean, occasionally I'll search Twitter for the company that I work for. Man, some people are just like, oof. Yeah, I know there's some stuff missing from the shelves. You know what? If you knew what we were dealing with on the back end to get it to the store, you'd be a little more understanding. But, there's been some issues. Tensions are high. We're all working a lot. There's been some things that probably would have gotten some people in trouble that haven't gotten people in trouble.
Sure.
Just, interpersonal issues where you're just like, all right, well, we're sending both of you to work, so we're just going to put you in different parts.
That's amazing. I like it. It's funny to me. Like, I know it's not a fun time, but it's interesting. Just
I mean, it's definitely interesting. I mean, there's some things that I probably would do different if I was in charge, but who doesn't have those?
Right. Yeah, I'm starting to reach that point I'm only at 4 months or so at my new job, and I'm kind of like my mind's already like, you know what? We could probably do this better. Or I've sold enough things where I'm like, I bet you I can upsell if we just put up this sign. There's like little things like that I'm already starting to come up with. So I'm like, I know I was trying not to get into a leader or manager position right away, but I'm also like, I've got some ideas here that'll probably raise profits.
This is the keyword you need to use: profit share.
Oh yeah, or profit margin. Yeah.
Yeah. No, just say like, hey, if this makes more money, I want to make more money.
That's true too.
That, or put away your money and open your own stand somewhere else. Do it the way you want.
Probably fucking vacancy all over the place anyway.
Oh god,
kinds of businesses
everywhere. I mean, granted, we're in Florida, so it's not as bad. But
that's true.
There's so many. Like, I mean, God, if you went to New York, you could probably
forget it.
Something in Manhattan for there wouldn't have been things available for like 20 years before.
Dude, when I went to Chicago last year, we were just driving around the neighborhood I grew up in and all the different shops and stores. I'm like, oh my God, all of these different places. The bar we used to go to when I drank every year, it was called America's Bar. That shit closed down during the pandemic. And it was like so many businesses that I saw as landmarks fucking gone. Like it's
They're
really
just
bad up
gone.
there in Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah. Illinois has been bad. I heard a lot of similar things about California, New York, obviously. Basically, any place that had like super strict restrictions kind of got hammered worse. I mean, we did get some of it here in Florida, which is, I think right now the biggest problem is employee shortages.
Yeah,
Just people either not wanting to come to work or, having people out sick where you got to keep them out, which it's tough. But I mean, like, man, like a lot of the McDonald's around here like closed now. I'm like, what?
yeah.
What do you mean I can't get a double cheeseburger at like 3 a.m?
I saw in one of the rants and raves locally here in one of the towns, like people were like, "Fucking," I forgot which restaurant it was. They closed at 7 p.m. And everyone in the threads like they probably don't have employees to work
Yeah.
the rest of those shifts. Most of the time, they put up a sign. Did you check the window? Then they just went through the drive-through. So it's like
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
common now.
Well, it's like the one McDonald's over here I went to get my son a Happy Meal the other day, and I hate drive-through lines, especially if I'm going for like one thing. So I'll usually go inside, especially with McDonald's where they got the little touchscreen thing
Right.
where like they don't mess up my order. I'll just go in there and order it and then just wait because it's usually faster than if the line's wrapped around the building. I go in there and the lobby's locked, and I'm like, what? What's happening? Like there was just you couldn't go inside. It wasn't a sick thing. It was just they didn't have enough people to man both the drive-through line and the inside line.
That's what happened with Kelly's restaurant, where she had so many people out that she's like, for the next 2 days, we're just closing down the lobby. And people had a fit because
Oh
they like
yeah,
to sit there and do their computer things or whatever, or just lounge for hours. And she's like, I don't have fucking staff to have registers running inside. And it's like, we just do drive through only, and mobile orders were shut down too. She's like, we can't even do that. Like, it's just
yeah.
drive through.
I had that Wawa the other day over here did that where like they weren't taking mobile orders. Like if you went in, there was everything was there, but they didn't have, they usually have like the smoothie milkshake person.
Yeah.
Nobody there. There was only like two people behind the food counter where usually I see like three or four, and there was one person on the register. Like just people are out of work
Mhm.
just for whatever reason. And then, it's kind of a cascading effect that I've noticed that, if one person's out, well, they were probably contagious before they figured it out. So now you got other people in the store that are going to get sick. And that's just how it goes these days. There's a taco bus that opened up right over here, which I'm not sure if you're familiar, but yeah, it's pretty good. It's like one of those like, like in the gas station, how like Subways will do,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's a taco bus. And, you look at the hours online and they're open from like 11 to 6. And I'm like, so they have like two people.
More than
And
likely. Right.
it's just like one shift. It's not like a stand that usually has like a ton of employees, but like they just probably couldn't find enough people to have it open earlier or later,
Yeah, it makes me
which is
wonder, like,
frustrating.
yeah, exactly. Makes me wonder, like, where I'm working at. If I weren't there, would there have been someone else? And maybe there would have, maybe there wouldn't have. If that would have affected the hours, maybe the owner would have had to work more. I'm sure there's a lot of that happening where the owners
Oh
are
yeah.
going in there and just working open to close just to make
Yeah.
money.
Owners, managers, the people that get stuck picking up for everybody else. I mean, those positions are still. I mean, I'm sure you kind of ran into a little of that with the comic shop when you were there.
Absolutely. At one point, I was the only employed guy, like right after, like during the shutdowns, and when we were doing the drive up only. It was just
Hmm.
me I was like, all right, the first guy to get called back from to work, and it was me, and it's just me in a closed store, lights off, just filling, phone orders. Like, yeah, I want to pick up these books. There was no new books coming, but we were like, hey, pick up some trades, pick up some pops or whatever we could do.
Right,
And it
just to
was
get some
insane.
kind of income coming in.
Yeah, thankfully no one from when I worked there got COVID, so we didn't have to fully shut down. Yeah, but I was seeing it at other stores, and yeah, some other stores in the company were being shut down.
Yeah, no, it's sad, but it'll bounce back. I think the estimates as far as like Omicron, I've seen like it's going to be a rough couple months with a lot of people getting it because it is super contagious. But luckily, from most studies that I've seen and most doctors that I've looked at, especially from like other countries that got it earlier, it tends to run about 3 months or so,
Okay,
and it's a lot more mild
that's
than
good.
the original for sure. Which is, luckily the way that viruses tend to go. They get more contagious and less deadly as they kind of evolve. Yeah, no, it's gonna be a rough few months, I think, as far as that goes. But it'll clear. I have faith.
Me too.
We'll get back to normal,
I've been
especially
through
here.
worse.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've been doing this for 2 years now.
We're like the characters in Mad Max Fury Road.
Basically, we're just like,
Grizzle.
all right, well, this is what we're doing now.
These are going to be stories that like people our age, our kids, anyone that remembers this era are going to be like, back in my day, and they're going to talk about the COVID shit. Like, you think you have it hard now?
15-hour shifts because no one else would show up. Because 15 is always the old guy number.
Yeah.
I used to walk 15 miles to school uphill both ways. I'm like, why didn't you just go back the same way you came?
Similarly, on Twitter, there's an account called Dear Customer, and they're like, how come it's always an hour and a half when the customer complains? I drove an hour and a half. It's like the default setting.
Well, it's like every time I go to pick up my prescriptions from the pharmacy, like no matter what time I tell them I'm going to show up to get them, and it's like, I usually put them in like for refills like the day before. So I'll be like, hey, have them ready by like, and they'll have like options like ready by, I'll put like 3:00 so I can pick it up on my way to work. And somehow it's always, they need another 30 minutes. I'm like, all right, well, do you just take 30 minutes to fill a prescription and you just didn't do it till I got here? Like, what's happening? It's always 30 minutes.
30 minutes. Outside of all of the weird production COVID stuff and my family, going through some illness, like I said, Kelly didn't go and get tested. So I don't know if it's COVID or not, but she's on the upswing. We did put in some time on The Witcher. So we got to be over halfway done with season 2. And then I was starting to fall off of The Sopranos. And I was like, all right, well, let me watch the next episode. And it's starting to really catch me. So season 1, I think I'm in episode 6 now. It was right. I don't know. Did you see The Sopranos?
I've seen most of it.
I finished the first season episode where his wife almost sleeps with the priest, or there was like this weird, he slept over and they got drunk.
Yeah.
So that's the one I last finished. Then he kills the rat in the motel, which was pretty fucking funny. But so
that was a good one.
There's so much funny shit that happens in there that I'm like, oh my God, like that's the stuff that I laugh about. Like it's funnier than I expected.
It's not even necessarily like the mob stuff. That's the entertaining part. It's like it's a human drama with mob stuff happening. You know what I mean? It's like the kind of driver to like just the weird stuff that happens. And I think that's usually what makes a good show. Like if you look at most of the good medical shows, it's not so much like the medical part. It's just like a drama that takes place in a hospital.
That's the stuff that we all relate to, that we can, because obviously, I mean, we're not mobsters, but everyone's like, oh shit, I can watch the Witcher or The Witcher, where we're not witches yet either. So
that's fair.
You got to get
probably will never get the opportunity.
Got to get that human relation for the audience to connect with. But otherwise, that has been another episode for us. A lot of video game talk, actually, and some Snyderverse stuff that's always happening every week. But in case you're listening to this far in the future, you're kind of getting a glimpse of some more COVID life, or not even post-COVID life, but we're still going through it.
It's still here.
Yeah.
I have a feeling it's going to be endemic. It's just never going away. We're just going to start learning to live with it. Could be.
Hearing how you feel and talking about it earlier and how your household has been too, I do want to thank you, Jarrod, for coming on. I mean, it would have been fine if you canceled and pushed another week or two or whatever, but you came on, and I really do appreciate that. I know how it can be when, I don't feel great, but I know how it can be to not feel great and, go to work or do a show or something like that. So I do want to say I appreciate that, Jarrod.
Yeah, absolutely. You do what you got to do. I made a commitment. I'm not dead yet, so we're good.
Let them know where they can find you in case they want to continue the conversation.
Oh, well, you can find me in our Discord. Of course, I'm always in there. And then on Twitter, you can find me at Spoon Sandwich, would be the easiest place.
There will be links to Jarrod's Twitter on the description, as well as our Discord. And this week, in case you want to support more content creators this year, if that's one of your resolutions, we do have an ongoing Patreon at patreon.com/thereasonsimBroke. For as little as $1 a month, you can get the episode early every single week. So sometimes I put them out Thursdays, Fridays, depends on how quickly I get it edited and when we record in the week. And you don't have to wait until Sunday when it publicly releases. We also do Patreon exclusive episodes, which the next one is going to be The Amazing Spider-Man. And this was through a Patreon poll between Interstellar, American Psycho, and The Amazing Spider-Man on which one we should do a retrospective on. And that one will be going up a full month before it releases early. So lots of perks if you join our Patreon. That's at patreon.com/thereasonsimbroke. Otherwise, you can also find the link on everywhere you can find us at thereasonsimbroke.com. So thank you once again for being on with us this week. I've been Daniel, joined by Jarrod, and Brokehead Core. All will be well. Is there anything at this year's E3, Jarrod, that you are hoping to see, even though it's switching online only? Is there something that's like, okay, Bully 2 was rumored to come out, any kind of rumored game, or just any sequel or original IP that you're kind of hoping for?
I'm hoping for some more Starfield stuff, honestly.
Really?
That's kind of my big one. I don't know. I'm a Bethesda game person. I like them.
Didn't they just get bought up by someone?
They did. They got bought by Xbox.
There you go. That's right.
So Starfield's going to be a Xbox ecosystem exclusive, which I know a lot of people are really upset about. But man, I've been having a lot of fun just having access to all their games on Game Pass.
So more from Bethesda, Starfield. That's the one that tricked me last year where I was like, Star Fox? No, not Star Fox.
Nope. It's a different game.
Well, you can tell what I'm looking forward to. Just a Star Fox that's never going to happen. I think that franchise is pretty much dead at this point.
Maybe. You never know, though.
It keeps coming back somehow, but the last time, like, it really was bad. Like, it was really like, Nintendo was like, all right, well.
Oh, was that the one with the Ubisoft and the toy thing? And yeah, I actually bought that.
Dude, I couldn't find it.
I bought it because I saw it was on like sale at GameStop, and I'm like, oh, I can get the whole thing for like, it was like $23 or something. And I'm like, okay, I'll get it. It was bad. It was awful.